Welcome to the Living a Meaningful and Fulfilled Life You Love channel. I usually post a collection of great inspiration stuff I've found once a month. So simply click the subscribe button below to be notified through YouTube when I post a new collection. Enjoy.
My husband will tell me, Tina, really, why are you so happy in the morning? Where have you been at night? At night, when I can't sleep, I will never take a pill or things like that. I will read. And then I will sleep like a baby after that. One of the poems that I love, on the day when the weight deadens on your shoulders, may the clay dance to balance you. And for me, is something that I make will balance me for that day. The clay is my healing process every day. To find clay was wow. To take the mud, to form it, make something with my hands. When there's sadness in here, I can take it out through my hand. And I can put my sadness in there instead of putting it in myself or putting it into somebody else. It helped me to come from the darkness and find something from earth to give me warmth. When I was a little girl, I hadn't had that warmth. I think that's why I'm seeking warmth always. My mother was very, very depressed when I was like 3 or 4. To see the brokenness in my mother, to see how she's crying the whole time. Emotionally, she was not there. You need love as a child. You need your mother's love. And I couldn't have that. I missed something, not being loved or pushed away. But for me, that was so part of who I am now. There's a craving in me to look after people, whoever comes through the door. I will give people a place to rest, to feel that they feel safe enough to open up, to be themselves when I'm around. For me, that is the secret to embrace and to have that warmth. And that was a thing that I didn't have when I started life. I know that life is difficult. Life is not easy. Something awful happened to me when I was a student. And it's maybe easy for me to talk about it now because I thought to talk about things like that, you can help people. I was raped as a student. I went to a music orchestra, and it was raining like madness. It was like a storm, and then somebody stopped to give me a lift, and then there it was. It wasn't a lift. It was a difficult time. It was not a time where you talk about things like this. You will not even tell your mother and father because it's like something so dark and it's like a clot op jou naam. I was so depressed. I stopped eating, I stopped talking, I stopped living. It's so important to choose life. Thank heavens that I didn't stuck there, that I could get out of it, that I could have people who loved me. I found my husband. I could talk to him and he would listen for hours to me, and that was what I needed. I had lots of brokenness in my life. For me, it really gave me something special. It made me the person I am now, and it gave me personality. And it gave me the hunger to love life and to be passionate about people. And sometimes in darkness, there's more light. Like a firefly. You can't see a firefly in the day. But when it's dark and it's not going well with you, then if there's somebody with a word or something beautiful, it will give you light. And I feel that I must go and be a light, a small light, an interesting light, maybe a colorful light, onto people's lives when it's not going well with them. I hope that people will remember that I've cared for them and that I loved them, and that they will go and love somebody else. to have that ketang that will take love further, and for people to have found life and give that away to people around them. If I can just be a fairy and just sprinkle a little bit of gold onto people, for me that's wonderful. And it's reflecting back to myself. If I can see somebody lifting up and the spirit is there and they feel better, that for me is a wonderful thing to discover in life.
Thanks to all of you who helped make this film possible. All of our films are totally crowdfunded, so if you'd like to continue to support us on our journey, check out our Green Renaissance page on Patreon.
This after-school presentation was written and narrated by Eternalized. Swiss psychologist Carl Jung saw how the modern materialistic world of money, pleasure, fame and power did not lead to happiness, but rather an increasing sense of meaninglessness, anxiety, suffering and loneliness. He sought to bring our attention back to the search of our soul and to restore our connection with the self, our innermost sanctuary. Life is a journey of discovering ourself, which is our true and complete personality, consisting of both our conscious and unconscious lives. This is what Jung calls the individuation process, our journey of psychological maturation. It is the indestructible foundation that supports us when we can no longer support ourselves, like a rock that the waves keep crashing over, standing unmoved despite the raging of the sea. To be in contact with this deeper part of ourself is to be in a state of tranquility, undisturbed by wild emotional fluctuations. The goal in life is not perfection, but wholeness. For Jung, there are two stages of life that are part of individuation. The first half of life is oriented towards the outer world, work, education, relationships, etc. We must throw ourselves into the fire of life and expose ourselves to daily life and hard work, which solidifies our personality. Natural life is the nourishing soul of the soil, which provides a rich source of nutrients that heals us. This is why contact with nature is important. We mustn't get lost in abstract thinking to the detriment of practical life. It is the body, the feeling, the instinct, which connects us with the soil. In his old age, Jung continued to value this way of life. He wrote, "I have done without electricity, and tend the fireplace and stove myself. Evenings, I light the old lamps. There's no running water, and I pump the water from the well. I chop the wood and cook the food. These simple acts make man simple, and how difficult it is to be simple." This anchoring in reality is a prerequisite for the second half of life, where our focus shifts to our inner world, our quest for individuation. And this is the phase of life Jung is mostly concerned with, the realm of the unconscious. The world of the inner life is as infinite as the world of the outer life. Man lives in two worlds. Many people, however, have neglected this part of themselves and only remain half alive. They are unprepared by the natural transition into the second half of life and fall into a midlife crisis because they have not learned to align both worlds. When we are confronted with the real and crushing problems of life, we desperately search for our soul. We realize that the values we have learned from society provides no help to us. Conformity is the great destroyer of selfhood. The opposite to courage in our society is not cowardice, it is conformity. We are often persuaded to take the apparently easier road of merging with the crowd and forgetting ourselves. It requires courage to stand against the crowd. A person can be surrounded by a crowd of people and yet feel completely alone because he's alienated from himself. The search for the soul is a solitary task, and when we avoid the soul, It keeps on stirring, it disturbs us, makes us restless, and gives us no peace. However, these problems are important. They are incentives for us to undertake soul work. Without the trials and tribulations of life, we aren't likely to summon the determination to overcome the indifference of daily life. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. The gate that leads to destruction is broad, and many enter through it, but the gateway to peace is narrow, and none may enter save through affliction of the soul. It is wise to nourish the soul, otherwise you'll breed dragons and devils in your heart. Every psychic advance of man arises from the suffering of the soul. Embrace your grief, for there your soul will grow. Like the primitive indigenous tribesmen, Jung recognized that the loss of soul leads to a sense of meaninglessness in life. When a tribe of people lose their feeling that their way of life is worthwhile, they may stop reproducing, or in large numbers simply lie down and die beside streams full of fish. Food is not the primary nourishment of man. In place of our current banal life, Jung would ask us to embark on a great adventure of self-knowledge, which comes upon investigating one's inner world, the unconscious realm. And for Jung, this is the true journey of life. Without the soul, the body is dead. And without the body, the soul is unreal. The soul is the home of our supreme values. Dreams are the guiding words of the soul. We must carry them in our heart and go back and forth over them in our mind, like the words of the person dearest to us. The dream is a little hidden door in the innermost and most secret recesses of the soul, opening into that cosmic night which was psyche long before there was any ego consciousness. Apart from dreams, Jung developed the technique of active imagination, where you have a dialogue with different parts of yourself that live in the unconscious. It is similar to dreaming, except that you are fully awake and conscious during the experience. He discovered this technique when he experienced the dark night of the soul, or what he calls his confrontation with the unconscious, a midlife existential catastrophe in which he was overwhelmed with visions and plunged into unknown depths. It was as though he experienced a psychological death, and he decided that outer death is better than inner death. For that reason, he turned away and sought the place of the inner life, and thus began his search for his soul. This led to one of the greatest contributions to mankind, the Red Book. Jung wrote, my soul, where are you? Do you hear me? I speak, I call you. Are you there? I have returned. I am here again. I've shaken the dust of all the lands from my feet, and I've come to you. I am with you. After long years of long wandering, I've come to you again. There is only one way to the soul, and that is your way. There is only one salvation, and that is your salvation. If the path before you is clear, you're probably on someone else's. Each one must go his own way. Hence look into yourself, for you must fulfill the way that is in you. When we are in contact with our inner self, we are more likely to experience synchronicities, that is, meaningful patterns in life where the inner world is seen to have a correspondence in external reality. The first step towards individuation is the integration of the shadow. This is not our enemy, but our ally. It contains pure gold waiting to be integrated into our personality. It becomes dark only when it is ignored. We must learn to watch our emotional impulses and be aware of projecting our own problems onto other innocent people. It is only after the encounter with the shadow that we can move on to the deepest part of the soul, which Jung calls the anima, the female psychological tendencies in man, and the animus, the male psychological tendencies in women. These are the contrasexual soul images in our psyche. While the integration of the shadow is the apprentice piece, the soul image is the masterpiece. The integration of the anima is done through taking seriously the feelings, moods, and fantasies of the unconscious and bringing them into reality through creative work such as painting, writing, sculpture, or musical composition. The anima is the source of life, and when it is not integrated, we feel lifeless and depressed. It enriches our life by making the unconscious contents conscious. The animus, on the other hand, is the source of meaning. It gives our unconscious contents meaning in the outer world. It endows a woman with qualities of initiative, courage, objectivity, and spiritual wisdom, avoiding cold and destructive reflections or hidden convictions about how life ought to be, as if stuck in a cocoon of dreamy thoughts, which cuts a woman off from the reality of life. The integration of the soul image is what calls a path to the most fundamental figure, the self. Wholeness can only be achieved through a union of opposites, in which our light and dark side are united. Jung's individuation process is analogous to the great work of the alchemists, where the philosopher's stone is a symbol of the self, which is found within oneself. For Jung, the task of alchemy is psychological. It is the art of expanding consciousness, of self-realization. When we have lost our way or do not know what to do with our life, we can only surrender to the higher wisdom of the self, our constant inner companion through life. Jung did not see himself as a healer, but as someone who could guide you to heal yourself. The cure ought to grow naturally out of the wounded individual. This search for ourselves allows for empathy, mutual understanding, and a desire to become an ally in other people's journeys towards psychological maturation. Thus, we improve our relationship with ourselves, with others, and with nature. Life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be experienced. We do not require any esoteric knowledge to be in contact with the self. Anyone can take the time to look within, to reflect on life's meaning, to give time and attention to values, interests, and activities that bring joy and fulfillment to one's personal life. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. If you are interested in learning more about the works of Jung, head over to my channel Eternalized, where I have explained these concepts more in depth. Thank you for watching.
One day I was on a walk here, it's hot, I was thirsty. I went to fill my hands and it made me think of a chapter from the Tao Te Ching, an ancient Chinese philosophical text written by a person called Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu in this chapter says, "Overfilled the cupped hands drip, better to stop pouring. Retire when the work is done. This is the way of heaven." The chapter talks about when is enough, and this is a question that I find really difficult. And I imagined maybe one day having a conversation with my future child. Let's call my son Oliver. And he has overeaten, he's had so many sweets that he's been sick. And you wonder, Oliver, why have you done that? How much is enough? And so maybe the next weekend I'd take him for a walk. When we were thirsty, go and try and fill our hands. And I'd ask him, when's a good time to stop filling? Hopefully, he would say, well, before my hands are full, because I don't then spill water on the floor unnecessarily. But he's only 10 years old, so he may say more is better. I'm going to drink and drink and drink. And that's not only kids, right? I certainly have been known to overwork. I enjoy running, but how many runs do I need to go on before I feel I am good enough, worthy enough of fully accepting myself? I'm still working on that one. So why are we like this? Well, as a society, we don't really talk about when is enough. In fact, quite the opposite. We consider those with the bigger bank balances, the more stuff, the more Instagram followers as the successful, rich and valuable ones. We equate more with value, and we have been trained to think like this. I mean, it dates back decades and decades and decades. In the 1920s, economists in America were worried that a new generation would have all their needs met and so would no longer demand new things and the economy would be hit. And so President Hoover's Economic Committee declared that advertising will ensure that new desires are created at a faster rate than they are fulfilled. And almost 100 years later, we're still living in a world surrounded by those images.
Here in my garage,
And I imagine Oliver maybe seeing an advert on TV demanding the new toy for Christmas, and only a week later demanding the next one. But it is deeper than advertising. There does seem to be something in human nature. I mean, think about the last smartphone you unboxed. How did he feel? And how did he feel a week later? Yeah, we have this annoying habit of habitualizing to all the wonderful stuff that comes into our lives. And that's true of all these external rewards. There is always the next person with the more prestige and bigger bank balance and perkier bum. The game of more is better is not one that we can win, it's in the name. More doesn't have a finishing point. And yet we've set ourselves up so all of us are striving for the water coming into our hands. We want more, we want better. We rarely look down to see where our hands are, what we truly need, or even to realize that our hands may already be overflowing. And what does the society look like, made up of individuals whose hands are overflowing? I feel undereducated in what my needs are. I think a lot more about how do I get what I want. But as we've seen, desires does not equal needs. And so if you think you're on this planet for more than just accumulating stuff, then it's time for us to reclaim what an idea of a good, successful life looks like. It's like asking, what do my hands look like? What do I need? And what do I have now? You know, what do I need? That's a difficult question. A roof over my head, so I'm going to not spend my money on frivolous things and instead save up. I also need the planet not to be overheating dangerously so that me and Oliver can be safe, so I'm going to vote for politicians that talk about how the game of more is better is no longer serving us. I need time with Oliver, I need time with friends, I need rest. You know, rest. Maybe this is why we're set up like we are, because the powers that be worry that if we had our needs met and we were okay with who we are now, then we wouldn't do anything. But you just got to look at children who are natural, explorers and creative without any need for an external reward. And look, when I stop filling and take a drink so that I'm no longer thirsty, I now have space to look up and look around and tend to the things that really matter. To stop filling, retiring when the work is done, isn't this never do anything again? Eventually I'll have to start filling my hands again when I'm thirsty. It's dynamic, a rhythm of filling and stopping and filling and stopping, and yet it is that second part that I find hard to value. And that's why I'd like to have that conversation with my son. The next time I ask him, when is a good time to stop filling your hands? He would reply instantly and say, of course, when I'm no longer thirsty. And this can be powerful. Imagine what the world could be like if more of us, when we go to start filling again, we pause and ask, when is enough?
Once the most powerful man in the known world, Marcus Aurelius attempted to live virtuously, following Stoic principles. Unlike many Roman emperors, he did not indulge in the many pleasures he had access to, like getting drunk on wine and watching sadistic games in the Colosseum. Marcus Aurelius wanted to fulfill the task fortune had given him, which was serving humanity. So he cared deeply about fulfilling his purpose. But to do so, he had to care less about the things that aren't worthy nor wise to care about. And these things are many. One of the essential concepts in Stoicism is the schism between things we control and do not control, which Epictetus and Caridian explained so clearly. Most, if not all things, beyond our own actions are not up to us. Does that mean that we should renounce the world? Not necessarily. But the Stoics believed that we should be realistic about our limited influence on these things, and that we create an unnecessary burden for ourselves if we aren't. When life hurts, it often means that we care about things we have no control over, and by doing so, we let them control us, play with us like puppeteers. Then we blame the puppeteers for pulling our strings, while in actuality, we allow them to do so. But if we stop caring about them, they lose power over us and will be undisturbed. For Marcus Aurelius, being unperturbed by things outside of his control allowed him to cope with the many responsibilities and challenges he faced as an emperor, and to focus on the task he believed he was given by the gods. For Epictetus, it meant freedom. For other people, not being moved by external forces or a selection of them could be a way to focus on goals that do matter. And for others, it could simply be a path to a happy, carefree life. When life hurts, what are the things we should stop occupying ourselves with? And how do we do it? This video is an exploration and free interpretation of Marcus Aurelius' philosophy on how to care less about things that aren't worth caring about. By the way, you'll find more Stoic wisdom in this book, Stoicism for Inner Peace, which contains my collected works on remaining calm and focused in these challenging times. You'll find a link in the description. In his meditations, Marcus Aurelius repeatedly differentiates between present, past, and future. In each category, the ancient Roman emperor has valuable things to say about how we either care too much about them, or in the wrong ways, or about the wrong things. For clarity and structure, this essay is subdivided into these categories, starting with the future. As Seneca once stated, we suffer more in our imagination than in reality, implying that our thoughts are the source of our suffering. When it comes to the future, our imagination often goes wild, inventing countless scenarios of what could happen but probably never will. Beforehand, we think of ways to handle possible outcomes, while shivering because of the idea of not knowing how the future will eventually play out. In some instances, what happens is what we anticipate, but in many other instances, fortune surprises us, overwhelming us with events we couldn't have anticipated. For example, we could have spent years preparing for a well-earned retirement, only to receive, right before the first day of our twilight years, a deadly cancer diagnosis that gives us just a few months to live. The possibility of such events leads many to continuous worry. The best could happen, but the worst as well. And what if the Third World War breaks out? What if I lose all my money? Such adverse outcomes are very well possible, but as long as they aren't happening in the present, we cannot deal with them, as these events simply aren't happening. At least, not yet. They only exist in our thoughts. The future only bothers us because we think about it, as it does not exist outside the mind. Marcus Aurelius wrote that it's not the weight of the future pressing upon us, but that of the present alone. It's not the future that hurts us, but how we deal with it in the present. The misery of the future happens in the present. And ironically, it's not the future unfolding in the present, as when we encounter it, it's already present. The misery of the future is our worrying about it now. When we care too much about future events, life eventually begins to hurt as we suffer them in our imagination, letting them dictate our present. So what does Marcus Aurelius say about caring too much about the future? First, let's consider the following quote. "Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present." End quote. He pointed out that if he could cope with the present, he could also cope with the future. He told himself not to picture everything dreadful that could happen, but instead stick with the situation at hand. When he focused on the present, he realized he could bear it, and if that's the case, why wouldn't he be able to handle what's yet to come? This attitude resembles the idea of amor fati, the love of fate, but then fortified with trust that we'll be able to get through it. 2. The past. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself of how fast existence passes by and disappears in the infinite beyond our grasp. The past, as the future, is a realm we cannot operate in. What's gone is gone, and unless we invent the time machine, we can't change anything about it. Marcus Aurelius stated, and I quote, "Remember that man lives only in the present, in this fleeting instant. All the rest of his life is either past and gone or not yet revealed. Short, therefore, is a man's life, and narrow the corner of the earth wherein he dwells." End quote. Despite the narrowness of our lives, which only occurs in the present moment, we're often overly occupied with these areas that lie outside of it and cannot be entered: the future and the past. Marcus Aurelius stated that the past signifies as much as nothing and is at present indifferent. It's not that the events that have happened in the past don't influence the present, or that we cannot learn from past events. It's just that we cannot work with the past, as it's out of our reach. And often, our memories of the past are scrambled, and ways to verify what exactly happened are limited. We rely on recollections from personal perspectives and different viewpoints of ourselves and others. So the past is not only out of our reach, our remembrance of it is most likely inaccurate. Yet, we keep caring about past events, often repeating them in our minds, re-experiencing the pain they caused us. Some believe that by thinking about the past, we may have some control over it, but that's an illusion. The past is gone. All we try to control are our thoughts about something that's been flushed away, never to return. I wish I could have done this differently, many people say, but they wish for the impossible. Nothing can be gained from such thoughts, as they evoke desires we can never fulfill. Instead of focusing on the past events in themselves, Marcus Aurelius focused on his reaction toward them. We cannot control past events. Most likely, we also couldn't prevent them when they occurred in the present. But we can control how we position ourselves toward these events. Initially, we might consider the past unfortunate. We might have had difficult childhoods, or experienced the ending of friendships, or failed business ventures. But according to Marcus Aurelius, the nature of these events isn't so important. What counts is how we handle them. He stated, "It's unfortunate that this has happened. No, it's fortunate that this has happened, and I've remained unharmed by it, not shattered by the present or frightened of the future. It could have happened to anyone, but not everyone could have remained unharmed by it. Why treat the one as a misfortune rather than the other as fortunate? Can you really call something a misfortune that doesn't violate human nature? Or do you think something that's not against nature's will can violate it? But you know what its will is. Does what's happened keep you from acting with justice, generosity, self-control, sanity, prudence, honesty, humility, straightforwardness, and all the other qualities that allow a person's nature to fulfill itself?" End quote. Interestingly enough, Marcus Aurelius doesn't discard the value of the past entirely. He believed we could learn from the past by looking at its rhythm, how things come and go, repeating themselves, so we can extrapolate the future. 3. The present. Marcus Aurelius frequently mentions that the present moment is all we have. It's the narrow field we have access to. From the present, we can stare into the endless abyss of the past and the impenetrable darkness of the future. Marcus Aurelius encouraged himself to stick with what was in his control, this moment. But even when we let go of the past and minimize our worries about the future, we may still very well care too much about things not worthy of concern, the things happening as we speak. We are often dissatisfied with the ways life plays out in a moment, and when things don't go as we wish, we tend to get angry, sad, or depressed. But according to Marcus Aurelius, being emotionally disturbed by what fortune throws at us is pointless. How the world around us unfolds itself is not up to us. How we react to it is. Yet, we tend to get disturbed because we don't like what's happening, or what we want to happen doesn't happen. Marcus Aurelius stated that we shouldn't fight what we're compelled to. He compared people who struggle with fortune to pigs, kicking and squealing when sacrificed. It's no use, as we can't avoid what the gods have in store. We cannot stop people from wanting to fight wars. We cannot stop natural disasters from happening. We cannot prevent our bodies from aging. In the same way, we cannot force the world to grant our wishes. We're not guaranteed that the people we're attracted to are also attracted to us, nor assured that all human beings have the same shots at life. It's just not possible. Yet, we spend a lot of time and energy resisting what is, and what we cannot change through any means in our arsenal. We're angry because we don't have what we want, and sad because we have occurred what we don't like, and thus the present moment becomes a torture chamber in which we suffer at fortune's every whim. Or reversely, we're so enamored with the present moment that we cling to it. We're afraid to lose what we have, so again we let fortune control us. But from our total entanglement in all around us, fleeting and ungovernable, we're often unable to see what's truly up to us, our choices, actions, and opinions. Marcus Aurelius saw the law of nature as our master. If we run from it or feel grief or anger about it, we're nothing more than deserters and fugitives. We must accept the ways of nature, embrace them, and focus on dealing with them, instead of wasting our energy being disgusted by or clinging to our circumstances. A way to accept the present, he wrote in the 7th book of his Meditations, arguing that we should focus on what we have, not what we lack, but with caution. I quote, "Treat what you don't have as non-existent. Look at what you have, the things you value most, and think of how much you would crave them if you didn't have them. But be careful, don't feel such satisfaction that you start to overvalue them, that it would upset you to lose them." End quote. Nevertheless, accepting one's circumstances can be difficult, especially when we face significant hardships and life gives us lemons repeatedly. Can't we just have a break? But to Marcus Aurelius, adversity is not an excuse to behave like squealing, screaming pigs. He argues it's an opportunity to practice virtue, or, in other words, to apply Stoic philosophy to one's life. The art of living isn't about how amazing and fortunate our external circumstances are, as they're unreliable, weak, fickle, and not our own. It's about how we face the events we meet. That's what we should care about, according to the Stoics. As Marcus Aurelius stated, "Because to me the present is a chance for the exercise of rational virtue, civic virtue, in short, the art that men share with the gods. Both treat whatever happens as wholly natural, not novel or hard to deal with, but familiar and easily handled." Thank you for watching.
Around 5 years ago, I watched a documentary on Netflix called Minimalism, and it blew my mind. I had many things in my life that didn't give me any value, and I felt this calling to simplify. I started to declutter my possessions, prioritize quality over quantity in friendships, and value time much more. I stopped wanting a big house. I set up my own measurements of success and became more present in life. During these 5 years, I have learned a lot of things, also unexpected things. The first surprising lesson that I learned after simplifying my life was that people don't understand that you don't anymore want more things. It's in our society a thing, wanting always more. For example, gifts, material things, wanting to always upgrade and get better something. There was a point where I had to kind of say to people that it's Christmas time, but don't buy me anything material because I already have everything I need. The first question is like, why? When I say that I don't need a better phone, I don't need top quality earphones, I don't need a new bicycle. One thing was that many people didn't understand why do I want to take more time for myself. I still remember vividly having this conversation with a person, and I said that usually I these days back then I worked 6 hours a day, and then this person was like, why? Why do you work so few? Like, you could make so much more money if you just work more, and with that money you could do so many things. And I was trying to explain that I don't see the value in that. I value my time much more than to get money so I can get things, because I don't need those things. And especially for people of older generations, it's difficult to understand why you don't need more, why you don't want more things. And for younger generations is that why you don't want new phone, why you don't want new TV, new technology, PlayStation 5, all this stuff. Another surprising thing that I learned was that there isn't such thing as perfect simple living, or perfect slow living, or perfect intentional living. You define it. You define what is simple living for you. You define what is minimalism for you, and what is intentional living, slow living for you. And this is something that I didn't understand at the start. I thought that I need to do all these things, and these things I cannot do. For example, with minimalism, I thought that I have to get rid of a bunch of stuff, like 90%. Or in slow living, I need to do everything slowly. Or in simple living, I need to move to a cabin, I cannot live in the city. And then at some point, when I was already beating myself up so many times why I'm not living like that, I realized I don't need to do any of those things. I can decide for myself what is that. Of course, there are certain things like in minimalism that you should think if something brings value to you, and that is of course healthy, and that is minimalism, but it doesn't mean that you have to get rid of everything. So you cannot be like a perfect minimalist or perfect slow liver, the organ. Your values change and things that in your life change. You start to value more some things that you didn't value before, and some other things that were super important for you in the past are not anymore. And the same things, for example, that gave you before that simplicity, that decluttered your life, could now create clutter in your life. Like, let's say if you cleaned every morning, now it's starting to give you just more stress, because if everything is not perfect. So then you just have to let go of that. Even though your house would be a little bit more cluttered, it can give you less mental clutter. So it's not at all black and white, how I used to think. I think it's more like yellow as my surroundings today. Let's find another nice spot and continue our bike ride. The third lesson that I learned after simplifying my life was that I am, as you are, constantly wrong. There were many times when I thought I need something, but in the end I didn't need it. I could survive very easily without that thing. Or certain way of living is better than another. Or my way of living is the best way. I was wrong many times because I realized after that way of living wasn't the best way for me. So you're constantly evolving, and keeping that mindset that probably I am wrong in this, as in many other things, helps so much in that. And to kind of test this, I'm currently living in my life with 50% of my clothes. I'm doing this experiment to see that when I'm minimalist, am I really minimalist? Like, do I need all these clothes still? Or can I live without them? And I think keeping this type of mindset keeps you all the time like open-minded and aware and ready kind of for opportunities, and not this very strict that this is how things are now and this is how things will always be. I mean, and one example of this is that I need a good microphone to make YouTube videos. Do I? Well, I don't know. Let's see if I will post this video, because if yes, I record it with my phone. But if I don't post it, well, I guess in that case it means that I really needed that microphone because the audio quality was so bad. When simplifying my life, I started to be much more aware of time, and I didn't want to waste it on anything. But now I realize that also wasted time isn't wasted time, because I already do so many things. So in that I was also wrong, that I needed to always do something more productive, because so many times I feel that mental clarity and that groundedness when I'm not doing anything, when I don't have anything planned. Yeah, the sun is setting soon, so let's move on to the next location. Shall we? My current filming spot is a little bit extraordinary, but it works. The fourth surprising thing that I learned after simplifying my life was that it really enhances your spirituality. Before simplifying my life, I considered myself to be zero spiritual person. I never understood, why the monks, for example, don't have any possessions, why they live this lifestyle when you don't have anything. But then I realized that it's because when you don't have anything, or when you have very few, you start to appreciate much more the things that you have. You start to be much more grateful for those things. And when simplifying life, for example, being minimalist or having like habits that simplify and declutter your mind, such as meditation, you start to feel that gratitude for life in general. Simplifying life helps you to go over this material box where you have been probably for multiple years, because that's what's normal in our society, and go beyond that and understand that you don't need anything anymore. You are already perfect. You are already full. And realize that if you want a fulfilling life, you have to go within and not search it from some external things. And I mean, simple living, slow living, they are still just tools to get closer to the true you. It doesn't mean that if you live simply or if you are a minimalist that you are amazingly spiritual, kind, compassionate person. No, you can be a minimalist and still be an asshole. It's just a fact. But the chances are that when you start to think what is important to you in life, you realize certain things and become closer to who you really are behind all those possessions and that image that you show to the world. The fifth surprising lesson that I learned after simplifying my life and unfortunate thing was that it didn't fix me. Man, I really wanted that this lifestyle would fix all my problems and I would live happily ever after. I mean, it is awesome and I have to say that it has changed many of my problems. For example, how can I have a better relationship with my partner? Or how can I find more similar-minded people in my life? As through simplifying my life, I have understood that that is something I would like to have in my life. If you were wishing that simplifying life would fix you, no, it doesn't. But it gives you many tools and find really what you need in life and not wake up when you are 50 or 70 and realize if I could choose, I wouldn't live it again like that. I cannot even speak anymore. My face is so frozen. Remember to stay kind and meaningful in your own beautiful journey. Seve signing out. Ciao.
Yep, this was it for today. Really hope you liked it. And if you did, please give it a thumbs up, maybe even leave a comment below, and subscribe to be notified through YouTube when there will be new videos about living a meaningful and fulfilling life you love. In any case, thank you very much again for watching and looking forward to hopefully see you in the next video.